That is a tough act to follow, so I'll do my best. It's great to be here and really nice to see everybody. The title of my talk is The Power of the Pause. So I'll just take a few of my precious seconds here to invite everybody just to check in with yourselves and just take a breath. Just pause. We're kind of halfway of the presentations, maybe a little further. So just feel yourselves. The question I want to pose to start my talk is, who are we? This is a question I think a lot about. I'm a prenatal and perinatal psychologist. Prenatal meaning the time around before birth, and perinatal meaning the time around birth. And this is a field that's looking at how our earliest experiences really inform who we are and how we live the rest of our lives. And what is emerging out of this field is a new understanding of human development. And the way we were thinking about babies and human beings before was really limited. We thought, oh, well, they're just these blank slates, and they're not really there, that they're not able to remember anything. And when a baby's born, they're just kind of a passive passenger, both in the womb and afterwards. But what we're really now knowing is it's creating a whole new picture, is that babies are conscious, that they're there, and they're aware from before the beginning, and that it's not that they develop into being human. They're there, they just emerge, their selfhood emerges as their brains develop and as they build the motor skills and the neural connections to really unfold into who they already are. And so what we're now knowing is that at conception, a sperm and an egg come together, and out of that two cells, one cell is created, and every other cell in that body is created out of that cell. And that's completely miraculous. I mean, we're hearing about pretty miraculous things today, but to me, that's miraculous. And so in the womb, the baby's becoming who they are, and the body's developing, and all of the organs are developing, and all of the brain structures are developing, and all of the neurons that they'll ever have and more are there. And this is a process of movement and then rest. So even in the womb, moms know when their babies are active and then when their babies are resting. And that's all part of this amazing development that's taking place. And then at birth, this tiny new person comes out. And when birth is allowed to happen in the way that it is pretty much, the biological imperative of birth is that a baby and a mom work together to come out of the mom's body. And again, it's this process of movement and activity and then rest. So it's an ebb and a flow, and the baby comes out and then goes back in a little bit and they rest. And then there's movement and a contraction, and then the baby goes back a little bit, and then ultimately the baby emerges. And so who is this person that arrives? And the way I like to think of babies is that, and those should be different, it's the big being in the little body. And I just love this idea that that person is there, and that person is a full, conscious, communicative, thinking, knowing being, but they're just in this little tiny body. And that little body at first is not really capable of doing all the things that they'll very quickly be able to do. And if you really just stop for a moment and think about it, a little baby coming out, that little baby, oh, go back. Sorry. One more. That little baby, who's moments old, is really just, that little baby is really just there and just taking it all in. And that baby can't come out and just get up and walk like a horse could do. You know, they're kind of, the foal comes out and they're wobbly, but in a few hours they're going to be walking around. This baby needs to be held close and needs to be kept warm and needs to be fed, and can't do any of the physical things that the baby will be able to do, but the person is there. And so when we think about that little baby, that little body, but the big being inside, it's really about respecting and acknowledging the personhood. And then when you think about what happens from the time they're born until their time they're 3 years old, I mean, that's extraordinary. There's smiling that happens from the beginning, but really starts to take place at about 6 weeks. And they're able to communicate when they're hungry right away, and they're able to communicate when they're wet, and they're able to start moving their body and moving their limbs, and then they're starting to crawl at about 6 to 8 months, and then by 9 to 10, 11 months, they're moving their body into a standing position, and then they're walking and they're running and they're talking. And by 2, 3, they're speaking in sentences, saying no, singing songs, telling jokes, and that's in 3 short years. And that's from that little 2 cells to this human being and this person. And it all happens without anybody saying, okay, now it's time for you to start walking, or now it's time for you to say this word. It just is in there, and it's the imperative. They want to develop, they want to grow and learn. So what we have to understand is that it's not a straight line from baby to developing person. It's a process of, here we go. It's a process of doing and being. So development is some doing and then some being, and some doing and then some being, and then some doing, and then ultimately there needs to be the being. The rest always has to happen in order for things to integrate. And so I just want to kind of share a little bit about the brain now. And so when a baby's born, this is our McLean's triune brain. And so if you understand that it's very crude, but for our purposes it'll work. There's 3 main parts of the brain, and there's our reptile brain, which is down here in our brain stem, and then there's this limbic system, our mammalian brain, which is here in the middle, and then we have this amazing human neocortex. And when a baby emerges from the womb, there's the beingness, there's the consciousness, but the brain isn't wired. They're only about 1/3 wired for when they arrive, and that's actually a really good evolutionary thing to have, because we wouldn't want them wiring for an environment that they're not coming into. So it's the environment that's going to shape how the brain wires after birth. So 1/3 is wired so that they can, basically that reptilian brain is online so they survive. So the baby gets hungry and their alarm system in their brain goes, hey, we're hungry, something needs to happen here, and that fight or flight system kicks in, and then that limbic system, which is all about emotion, kicks on and says, hey, wait, somebody help me, I need food. And then the parent, the caregiver responds and gives them what they need. And then over time, when they feel like, oh, I'm gonna get my basic needs met here, now I really have to start building the bigger things. And it's this neocortex that's really gonna start proliferating in its neural connections. And the way that happens is stimulation comes in through the senses, and the brain starts lighting up and everything gets exciting, and then all of a sudden the brain goes, okay, whoa, that's enough, we need a break, and it takes a pause. And so where you'll see this from the very beginning of life is if I were holding a little baby in my arms, and I had the baby here, and the baby looked at me, I would go, oh, hi. And then the baby would hear my voice and say, wow, you're connecting with me, and go, ooh. And then I would go, ooh. And then the baby might go, oh. And I would go, wow. And then the baby would look away, and I would pause and look away if I'm tuned in. And what's happening in that pause is the baby's brain has lit up to the extent that it can light up without going into overdrive. And now it's taking the pause so it can integrate what it's taken in and go, wow, that felt really good, but that's enough for now. And then the next time they come back, they go, wow, and we go, wow, and we start the game over again. And every time we do it, we get a little bit further, and they can tolerate a little bit more. But that process never ends. That's just being human. And so when we think about what happens in the pause, and again, that's not something that just happens with babies. It's something that happens throughout our lives. So what happens in the pause? The first thing that happens is orientation. Taking the pause is taking a moment to just check in with ourselves and feel where we are in the present moment and ground ourselves in time and space. And so we're not in the past, we're not in the future, we're in the present. We're orienting to the now. The next thing is that we regulate. There's regulation that happens. So we're taking in information, we're learning all sorts of cool stuff, and then the nervous system's going, oh, this is really cool, but as soon as we go a little further over than we can tolerate, our brain goes a little more primitive on us, and we start getting anxious, or we start feeling really cranky, or we get frustrated with the people around us, and that's because we're not in this neocortex anymore. We've overridden what can be handled in that part of the brain. We're slipping down the brain into our more primitive places, And when we catch ourselves and we take the break, we slow ourselves down and we regulate the nervous system. So we're self-regulating the whole system. And then the next thing is that we integrate what we've experienced. And that's really important because just like the baby, if we're doing our eye-to-eye contact game and the baby goes, woo, and I go, wait, come back, all that great work we just did gets overridden because now the brain is saying, oh, that was really good, but now I have to face what it means to be overridden and take in extra stimulation when I'm saying I'm not ready for that. And so taking that pause and integrating and allowing your neural networks to form and settle and kind of solidify into where they've just been is just allowing for another layer to be built upon that. And then finally, inspiration. And this one to me is probably the most important. And it's just the idea that it's in that stillness and it's in that settle where there's room for the ideas and the creativity to just bubble up and pop. And so when I was writing my dissertation, I would be writing a section and I'd complete something and I'd get a real good sense of what I was thinking. And then all of a sudden I'd stop and say, uh-oh, I'm not sure where I'm going next. And I would open my books and I'd look at my notes and I'd scramble and I'd call friends, what's gonna happen? Oh no, I don't know where to go. And then I'd get really frustrated and I'd just stop. And then I'd go take a shower or take a walk or go to sleep. And then out of nowhere, I would just be doing the thing I would be doing and the next idea would bubble out. And it wasn't in the doing that the idea came, it was in the being. And I really believe that in the being, there's more room for our authentic self, for that big being in our little bodies to bubble up and be speaking to us and for us to hear it. So why is this all an important conversation to be having now? I really feel like with modern life, which is pretty amazing, and we all have these fabulous gadgets, and we're able to check and look and learn and be thinking pretty much 24 hours a day, it's really going to become even more important that we're being conscious of taking the pause, because it's not inherent, it's not built in anymore. There's always something to be doing, and I'm as guilty as the next. And you know, we've got iPods, and we've got cell phones, and we've got laptops, and we've got people to talk to, and we've got Facebook, and there's always something you could be occupying your time with and putting in for stimulation. And I really feel like we have to become conscious of the fact that the pause isn't wasting time. It's actually giving yourself enough space to allow for what's next to emerge. And so I invite you all to make the pause a priority. And in doing so, yes, maybe string up a hammock, but honestly, even if it's just taking 20 seconds and taking some deep breaths, or it's drinking a glass of water and feeling your feet on the ground, or it's, you know, maybe you're not stopping what you're doing, but maybe you're becoming more conscious of where your body is or what you're noticing, and oh, my shoulders are tight, or oh, my stomach's a little tight. Let me just pause for a second. So really give yourself the space. And the metaphor that comes to mind when I think about this is if you were going fishing and you were out on a boat and you got into the middle of the lake and you said to somebody, oh, where's the good spot? And you made your way out there and you dropped your, and you got out there and all of a sudden you're going, oh, where are the fish? Where are the fish? And you're paddling around and you're looking and you're looking. You're creating all this turbulence, and it's probably likely that the fish aren't going to come anywhere near you. But if you get out there and drop your anchor, throw your line in and just get kind of still, or maybe just slow your motor down to like a very, 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 very kind of just light speed and just troll around a little bit, it's more likely that the fish are going to come and bubble, come around and get your bait and you'll get a fish. And so I think the same thing is true about creativity. We really have to make room for it and not chase it, but really allow it. And so just in conclusion, if you want to really play big, do less and be more. So thank you very much.